Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So it's time to start with our Season 22 deck profiles. And the first one that I wanted to do here is Dragon Link. I mostly wanted to start with this one, not only because it's obviously one of the better decks to ladder with and just, in general in the format right now, but I also wanted to cover specifically a build that I've been using before the new, KASHTIRA support comes out, because obviously, when that deck drops and turn 1 Arise Heart becomes a thing that will happen, this deck, needs to have an answer for a card that can just banish everything. So in a lot of ways, I think that will very much polarize how Dragon Link is built once that comes out. But of course, I don't want to load my deck up with, I want to be able to feature a build both pre and post KASHTIRA, I guess, mostly just to show how that really is going to change the meta. But in particular, if I'm going to be laddering with a Dragon Link build now, pre-KASHTIRA, I don't want to just stick to a build that is only going to have tech, that's good once KASHTIRA already comes out, the second wave anyway. So that's my roundabout way of saying we're probably going to see Dragon Link a couple of times this season, and this is the pre-KASHTIRA build, which, we have a couple of weeks of laddering to do before the deck drops, so I figured, we could still get some use out of a build like this, right? In particular, I think one of the things that I'm going to be adding once KASHTIRA drops is a lot more effect negation, either Imperm or Droplet, probably Droplet, honestly, because, we have some ways to summon monsters on our turn, and this deck often has the spare resources / wants to send cards to the graveyard via Forbidden Droplet. So, in the meantime, though, with this build, we're mostly thinking about stuff like the Mirror Match. We're kind of thinking about stuff like Pearly, although I will say, I initially had Underworld Goddess in my extra deck, but ultimately ended up dropping it to put Accesscode Talkder back in, and then funnily enough didn't end up using Accesscode Talkder once during my, games here that I was getting for the video. So, in that regard, I probably should have the Underworld Goddess over the Accesscode Talkder in the extra deck, just to have that out for the X-Pearly Noir. But funnily enough, I didn't really run into any Pearlies when I was getting games here. But I guess that also kind of makes sense, right? Especially at the start of the season, when you're at the, kind of Diamond 5 kind of area, a lot of people tend to... It's kind of like Master 1 in a way, where people will still kind of play fun stuff before there's any real consequence to them losing. So that could explain it as well. But in any case, I do think it is correct to have Goddess over Accesscode Talkder in this extra deck, as a way to play around Pearly, or at least have some kind of an out to Noir. That said, I play these games with the Accesscode Talkder in, so that's what I'm going to feature here. And also, to be fair, in Ranked Ladder Best of 1, you don't always have to have the answer to everything. That's a little bit more important for tournament play, where every single game counts, but for Ranked Ladder, as long as your win rate is over 50%, you're gonna climb up anyway. So I think in that respect, for a ladder build, it's fine to not have the answer for everything, and accept that, okay, if X-Pearly Noir comes down on the opponent's turn 1, then maybe there's just not a lot I can do about it. That's fine, we lose those games, we move on to the next one. I think I see... a lot of the time when people are talking about having so much check in their deck that makes their deck feel really bricky and dead, a lot of the time it's because they kind of want to be prepared for every single situation, which again, on ladder, I don't think is 100% necessary, but that's just my own 2 cents. The build here is exactly 40 cards, but it definitely doesn't need to be. That's just very much a me thing. A lot of Dragon Link builds, in fact, tend to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 42 to 45 cards, mostly, so... a couple of things that I'm doing, I don't know, I'm not doing anything super duper unique here, but there are a couple of things that are not necessarily the most typical. I'm playing both 2 Wyverburster and 2 Collapserpent. I've advocated for this forever with Dragon Link, and I still very often, or at least, on Master Duel meta, it seems like still a vast majority of people are on 2 Wyverburster, 1 Collapserpent. I really like having the second one. It offers a lot of utility that you might not otherwise get out of the baby Chaos Dragons. Particularly having extra discard fodder for something like Ravine is always nice. Having another copy means you open it slightly more often. The more of these you can open, the more freedom you have for your monsters like Seyfert or cards like Chaos Space to search and do other things. And, you need very little extension to get going in this deck, but it's never a bad thing to have a lot of gas, right? So... in that regard, I just really like having the multiple Collapserpent as well as the 2 Wyverburster as well. We're also doing the Rokket Caliber and no Rokket Synchron, no Hot Red Dragon Archfiend. I've been on this for a minute as well, and I really like it because You know, with the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, right, in order to summon that, there's so many things that kind of have to go right. You have to have summoned Chaos Ruler, you have to have been in a situation where you can summon Rokket Synchron, which you rarely get to normal summon it. Occasionally you might get to summon it off of like the Boot Sector launch effect, or maybe if you have a spare quick launch, but that's just so circumstantial, right? That I just wasn't really that big of a fan of it. The Rokket Caliber is a great extender in its own right. It can summon itself to a zone of Dark Link monster it points to, which is very relevant. It's a level 4 tuner. It can be used in conjunction with a Bystial in order to summon the Baronne de Fleur, which, I don't know, it's kind of debatable whether Baronne or the Hot Red Dragon is better. The Hot Red Dragon does have higher attack points and represents multiple negates, but I will say that the Baronne also has, of course, the Destruction effect, and on top of that, the Graveyard Summon effect during the standby phase is actually pretty relevant in this deck. But moreover, the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend is an Omni-Negate, but it can only negate a card on the field. Baronne can, of course, negate anything, no matter where it's activating. So, overall, I think the Baronne is just the better card, and is worth going into more. There are builds that do both, and I think if I was a little bit more willing to go over 40 cards, I'd be willing to try both. But at the same time, the extra deck is also really tight on space, so trying to find room for the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, I don't know, I'd probably have to drop, like, maybe Knightmare Unicorn or Dark, or maybe just drop Accesscode Talkder and not put in the Underworld Goddess. But again, I do think even if I don't think it's necessary to be prepared for every single deck, I think the Underworld Goddess is probably still correct to play. We're also on Nib and Crossout, because I play these in pretty much every deck in this meta. I think they're both really, really good. Especially Dragon Link, you know, a deck like this, having a potential out to Nibiru in the form of not only having the Crossout Designator, but also Nibiru in your deck is pretty important. And of course, they're just, again, both good cards in their own right too. So that's pretty much everything. There's not like too much going on here that's like super out of the ordinary, and I think that's fine, especially for a deck like this. But again, I think how we build and play this deck definitely and drastically changes once KASHTIRA comes out. So let's go ahead and take a look at this pre-build. We'll look at some games, of course, but let's break the list down card by card first. We are playing 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 White Dragon Wyverburster, 2 Black Dragon Collapserpent. We have 2 Rokket Tracer, 1 Rokket Recharger, 3 Starliege Seyfert, 1 Rokket Caliber, 1 Bystial Magnmahut, 2 Bystial Saronir, 1 Bystial Druiswarm, 1 Bystial Baldrake, 1 Absorouter Dragon, 1 Chaos Dragon Levianeer, 2 the Bystial Lubellion, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 3 Chaos Space, 1 Dragon Ravine, 1 Boot Sector Launch, 1 Branded Regained, 3 Quick Launch, 2 Call by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, and then 1 Branded Beast. That's going to be our 40 card main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 1 Borreload Savage Dragon, 1 Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon, 1 Baronne de Fleur, 1 Chaos Angel, 1 Guardragon Pisty, 2 Striker Dragon, 1 Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres, 1 Dragunity Knight Romulous, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 the Dark Charmer Gloomy, 1 Triple Burst Dragon, 1 Knightmare Unicorn, 1 Accesscode Talkder, and then finally 1 Borrelend Dragon. It's going to go ahead and do it for the list. Let's see some games. Alright, our first opponent is going to be on Brandon Despia, which I think is a fairly solid deck going into the new meta. We'll have to see how exactly it does. I actually haven't given a lot of thought to how that deck performs post-KASHTIRA. They are less susceptible to banishing hurting them than other archetypes, I will say that. But anyway, gonna be going first here. Gonna be starting with the Chaos Space on the Nibiru. We did open with Rokket Tracer and Boot Sector Launch, so we're a little bit less reliant on these plays necessarily going off, but I'm still going to go into the Striker Dragon, mostly so I can trigger the Collapserpent. Opponent is going to Saronir the Collapserpent at this point, robbing me of all dark monsters in my yard, but I do get to at least do the Chaos Space draw here. And again, we do have the Rokket Tracer and Boot Sector Launch already in the hand, so, you know, we get to at least have this kind of fallback line. Going to be using the Tracer on the Recharger here. I ultimately decided just to go for the Chaos Ruler to see if I could get a little bit more gas and as a way to put dark monsters in my yard. Because here's the thing, right? I could have just summoned the Tracer and gone for the Romulous, but at that point, I've already used my Boot Sector Launch, so Ravine sending Absorouter doesn't really do anything to add a Rocket monster to my hand, because again, I've already used my Boot Sector Launch. So I figured kind of abandoning that line was fine at this point, and doing so by using Tracer's effect to go into, you know, the Chaos Ruler, but also only Dark monsters for the remainder of the turn. So The Chaos Ruler Excavate was pretty lackluster here. I end up having to grab a second Wyverburster so I can send the Absorouter to the yard to add a Rokket Caliber to my hand. Gonna special summon that Wyverburster, that'll trigger the Branded Regained effect, which does top deck a quick launch, which is pretty good here. I'm going to be leaking Striker Dragon and Chaos Ruler for Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy. That way I can have a zone for the Pisty to go into. The Triple Burst Dragon, also the materials for it are just 2 monsters that aren't tokens, which is really nice. That means I can use my Dark and the Rokket Caliber in order to summon the Triple Burst. Again, we're seeing that the Rokket Caliber effect to special itself is very relevant here. Going to be using Pisty to bring back that Rokket Caliber, and of course linking all 3 into the Borrelend Dragon. Now my baby Chaos Dragons are not live here, but my quick launch still is, so I can use Borrelend to negate my opponent's Saronir, bring back the Recharger, go for the quick launch, summon the remaining Tracer in my deck, and then Synchro Summon for the Borreload Savage Dragon, because again I've already summoned my Chaos Ruler here. I'm not bringing back Chaos Ruler, by the way. I'm going to keep it in my graveyard for potential use on the next turn, because it doesn't add a lot to the end board here. It's not like I can use it to make like an IP Masquerena, and it would really only serve to get banished once my opponent eventually answers it. So we did ultimately still manage to end on the Borrelend plus Borreload, despite our opponent having the disruption, and us having to kind of divert from the regular combo line there. So opponent's going to start off with a Gold Sark. I initially thought that maybe they were on Thunder Dragons because of this, but they end up banishing the Despian Tragedy instead. I'll use the Branded Regain to see if I can get a draw here. Of course, now that I know that they're on Despia, I'm looking to use this Ash Blossom on a Branded Fusion. Opponent's going to add Alibur, but they're going to activate Branded Lost before normal summoning Fallen of Albaz, pitching the Branded Sword. I will, of course, chain my Borrelend Dragon. I think maybe my opponent thought that I wouldn't be able to respond to it. But it's weird, because I was able to, which I kind of would think as well, given the wording of Branded Lost. Opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster... Oh, when a monster is fusion summoned, I see. My opponent is not actually fusion summoning yet, they're just activating an effect that fusion summons, which is why I was in fact able to respond to it. Okay, that makes sense. Alright, so Borrelend, gonna bring back the Recharger here, negate the Albaz. Opponent is going to, however, drop the Alba Lanatus on me. And I gotta tell you something, as much as people like to meme when you're playing Dragon Link, like, oh, watch out for the set Albaz, I've never actually had this card summoned against me before while playing Dragon Link. This is literally the first time it's ever happened. So, at first I was confused. I was like, oh, is that an Underworld Goddess? I'm like, no, it's Alba Lanatus. Oh my god. This isn't lethal, though. It's only 5k, so that is pretty good. However, during the main phase 2, they will get to summon a Vert Anaconda, and unfortunately for me, I can't use Ash Blossom against the Branded Fusion effect if it's copied by the Vert Anaconda, so... I can, however, whenever it ends up happening, I will end up using the Ash Blossom against the Branded Lost Search, because I definitely don't want my opponent to be grabbing a Tri-Brigade Mercurier here. That would be very, very bad. I already have enough to deal with. So, alright. End phase, the Avalanatus will proc, adding them to Fusion Deployment. I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just going to have to worry about that later if it becomes relevant. Top decking a Maxx, certainly not the best top deck in the world, but I can go ahead and use Wyverburster to not only summon itself, but also banish the Borreload in the process. Doing that will allow me to put it back with the Branded Regained, and then I ended up drawing a Magnmahut, which gives me a new out here. So what I was initially kind of thinking about was like, maybe trying to somehow finagle my way into somehow summoning the Borreload again, maybe equipping the Borrelend Dragon that's in my yard. But by top decking the Magnmahut, we have a new potential out here, the Chaos Angel. It is going to be dependent on my opponent not using the Mirror Jade here. If the opponent did use the Mirror Jade on the Magnmahut in particular, that would be annoying for sure. If that were to happen, though, we do still have the Chaos Ruler in our yard, as well as the Collapserpent in our hand, and I believe, yes, we do still have a normal summon as well, so it's not like we don't have any options in that case, but thankfully for me, they do not respond with the Mirror Jade effect, and that's going to allow me to Synchro Summon for the Chaos Angel. This Chaos Angel was made using both a light and a dark monster, which is very nice, because that means it cannot be affected by the Mirror Jade, it also can't be destroyed by battle. But yeah, more importantly, my opponent can try to use the Mirror Jade effect here, but it's not going to work on the Chaos Angel. Wyverburster will add our remaining Collapserpent. Chaos Angel is going to end up banishing the Mirror Jade here. Mirror Jade can proc, but that's fine. My opponent's not going to live past this turn anyway. Gonna bring back the Collapserpent, or not the Collapserpent, the Chaos Ruler by its own effect. Summoning the Collapserpent, I guess just in case, I don't really know why, but then we're gonna move to battle and finish the opponent off. So that was a duel that really, I think, showcased the ability for Dragon Link to not only set up a board through Disruption, but then also follow up on the next turn with a pretty good comeback there. The Chaos Angel especially, that Magnmahut was such a good top deck, but it really could have been any Bystial monster, including Lubellion. So the Magnmahut might have seemed like a really lucky top deck, but if you think about it, we did have a lot of options, especially given how much of our deck we had already searched, drawn, and just thinned through in general. So, alright, there is our first game. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next one here. Alright, for this game, we're going up against Bikanko, and I won this coin flip, so I didn't have the information that, you know, I was up against Bikanko. You know, if you ever lose a coin flip, but your opponent lets you go first, you can pretty easily assume that they're on this deck specifically, and you can kind of play accordingly. Sometimes if you think you're against Bikanko, depending on the hand you have, it might be right to not even play anything, because of course Bikanko needs to be able to battle into a monster in order to win, and that can be a kaiju, so even having one monster on the field, no matter how much attack or defense points it actually has, can still represent lethal. But again, I won this coin flip, but also, I mean, look at this hand, right? Like, I definitely would have just made plays anyway. Not making plays into losing a coin flip and getting to go first anyway is like, it's not, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's rarely the right play, but I wouldn't say it's also frequently the right play either. Because I can definitely see a world where you just end up against a different deck and just, like, lose. Because you didn't play anything, but... in any case, I'm honestly just going for a pretty typical combo line here. I did open the Caliber in the quick launch. I don't know, I'm kind of bad about this sometimes, where, like, it's not even that I don't want to divert from the main combo line because, you know, I don't know what else to do. But I'm always, like, worried that my opponent's going to have, like, a Nibiru or some other form of disruption. So I'm like, okay, if I can just stick to the main combo line for now, or for as long as I can, and then not use my extra gas until later in the turn, then, you know, at that point I can reap the benefit of it while still kind of playing around the disruption. Especially, again, with the Nibiru being so much of a more common thing. I think in, like, you know, when Tier Limit was still Tier 1 and nobody was playing Nibiru, I think then it was probably more right to just kind of burn through all of your gas if you did open a bunch of extra stuff like I did here. But, I don't know. I think with the Nibiru being very relevant now, it's a bit more difficult to make that call. Alright, here I'm actually going to go for the Chaos Ruler instead of the Borreload, because it doesn't seem like my opponent's got, you know, the disruption that I fear they might, and I like going for Chaos Ruler when I can in this deck. It's really nice to have the extra gas, and here we're not going to, I don't think we're going to end up actually going for the Borreload, but we do get to do a couple of extra things here as a result of making this Chaos Ruler. One, we get to tribute it off to bring out Lubellion, to place down the Regained, and we did find a Druiswarm to go with our Caliber, so I get an extra draw off the Regained here for summoning the Druiswarm, and then I get to go into Baronne de Fleur, so we still represent the Omni Negate, even if it's not necessarily the Borreload there. Oh, I'm going to bring back the Chaos Ruler here. I know I said last time I don't like to do this on turn 1, for no reason, but there is a reason here. We get to go into the... I should have gone into IP Masquerena here. This was actually a misplay on my part for misremembering Hieratic Seal's effect. It can only bounce if it's in the extra monster zone, which I totally forgot when I summoned it. So this should be an IP Masquerena, but it's not. It's a Hieratic Seal. But pretend I'm a good player and pretend it's an IP Masquerena. In any case, even if we did make that little oopsie there, we still have some negates here. Well, fewer now that our opponent's given us a Kaiju, although we do get to summon a Druiswarm to the field when they summon that. However, they're going to use the Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, but because we did summon the Druiswarm, I get to get rid of my opponent's Jizukiru here. The Axe of Fools coming down on the Borrelend is going to indicate a couple of things. One, it does reveal that they are in fact on Bikanko, and two, and more importantly, it's going to negate our Borrelend's effect. So I'm going to want to make sure I chain the Borrelend effect here to get us summoned while I still can. Negating, of course, the Kaiju effect. That's not going to ultimately end up mattering because, well, I don't, you know, have Kaiju counters. Opponent is going to summon one of the Bikanko monsters, but it's not actually equipped with an equip card, so it doesn't have the effect that, like, reflects damage back to me, right? It's simply a monster that can't be destroyed by battle, and they don't take any battle damage from it. This, in combination with, I think we top deck the Levianeer? Yeah. This in combination with the Levianeer top deck is very, very good for me. So ignore this, I just totally forgot Borrelend was negated, but we can still normal summon the Starliege Seyfert here and sync it with the Tracer that I brought back last turn to go for the Borreload Savage Dragon. So now I have an Omni Negate up to potentially counter the opponent's face down card. Gonna summon the Chaos Dragon Levianeer here. Opponent, funnily enough, is going to end up chaining the face down, which is summon limit. Which is, again, funny because I don't need any more summons this turn. I'm even going to pop the summon limit alongside the Makonko monster with the Levianeer here, and I'm not ultimately going to even continue to summon because the Borrelend and Borreload together are more than enough damage to finish off my opponent here. Alright, so even though, again, we didn't have that information that they were on Makonko when we kind of set up into the Kaijus there and the Slumber and all that fun stuff, we definitely were still able to play around it with the... We even had our, like, both our negates were disrupted, and we were still able to kind of finagle a win there, which is pretty nice. Let's go and take a look at this next game here. Alright, here we're going to be facing off against Punk KASHTIRA. I thought for some reason, I guess because I didn't play against Pearly, really, that I played against more, like, fun decks, but it really wasn't even that. I just played against meta decks that weren't Pearly, so... Alright, going first again here. Once again, we're up against Punk. Going to be starting with the Lubellion effect to see if my opponent has any disruption. Nothing from them, so we're going to grab the Magnmahut. Normal summon Seyfert, Seyfert F rather, to grab the Collapserpent. Going to go into the Striker Dragon with the Collapserpent here. Again, always nice to open the Rokket Tracer. It kind of potentially frees up what we can send off the Dragon Ravine, but I'm probably just going to send an Absorouter anyway, and then we get an extra summon off the boot sector. But it is worth considering potentially sending like a Seyfert, or if you have a Seyfert in the yard, maybe like a Levianeer to grab it back. But pretty typical Dragon Link stuff we're starting off with here. Romulous is going into the... or rather, Romulous and Wyverburster are both activating here as we go into the Romulous, adding the extra Collapserpent. Again, very glad I have that. As well as the Dragon Ravine, especially because now we get to just pitch this extra Collapserpent with the Dragon Ravine's effect. I am going to ultimately just send Absorouter here, get an extra Caliber, you know, just have an extra summon off of this boot sector. Alright, I'm going to go for the Magnmahut here. Gonna divert a little bit, and I actually end up making a misplay in the process. I definitely put the Tracer in the wrong zone, which caused me to put the Baronne de Fleur in the super duper wrong zone. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was a huge misplay, because what I need to do is put Pisty here, so I can put Triple Burst here, and they can both point to the same zone. I can't do that on this side. Wait, could I have? Yeah, I could have. Wait. Oh my god. Oh my god. Did I actually, like, screw up? I thought I screwed up, but didn't. Oh my god, I just realized I could have just summoned... Yeah, I could have actually just summoned Pisty to this zone, because Romulus is still pointing to it, and then done Romulus Tracer into the Triple Burst here, and that still would have worked. Oh my god. Well, this is why I like to save replays even beyond just for YouTube videos, because you get to... That was like a double-layered misplay, because I thought I misplayed with the Baronne placement and then made a play to compensate for it, so... Alright, well, we're gonna find a bit of a creative line here, I guess. Gonna be summoning the Chaos Ruler, and we find the Seyfert off of it, which is really nice. Gonna end up adding the Seyfert to hand, sending everything else, then tripping off the Chaos Ruler for the Lubellion. Lubellion's effect is going to put down the Brandon Despia. I get to use Chaos Space to put the Collapserpent back, get an extra draw for the Saronir, which is really, really good draw. It's actually incredibly lucky, honestly, that I got that there. Chaos Ruler is going to bring itself back. Regained will get us another extra draw here. Saronir effect. Although, to be fair, yeah, we had the Chaos Ruler activate and multiple draws, so, like, it wasn't that necessarily lucky to find a Bystial monster, but going for the Borrelend, which we would have gone for anyway without using Pisty and Triple Burst, which randomly, I guess, ended up being a flex in this case, but it wasn't a flex, it was just me misplaying, so... You know, I guess ultimately we did still find it anyway. And ultimately the opponent had a Kaiju anyway, so did it really matter? I mean, yeah, it still did, but... Opponent's going to Imperm our Baronne, and then Feather Duster, so this looks really bad for us, right? But we still have the Ash Blossom and the Nibiru in hand. So I am going to actually use the Ash Blossom effect against the KASHTIRA Unicorn here, because I thought... If it's pure KASHTIRA, I don't want them to be able to get birth. I mean, I guess either way, I don't want them to be able to get birth here. and the extra deck banish is like not super relevant at this point. They end up taking the Accesscode Talkder, which I'm not concerned about in the slightest, before using Foxy Tune to summon the Xayamine, and thankfully they're going for the Ogre Dance here, or not the Ogre Dance, the Rising Carp, so they don't go for the Baronne. As soon as the Rising Carp hits the board, I'm definitely just going to go ahead and nib, because I know they don't have anything else left in hand or in their graveyard that's relevant. Summoning the Druiswarm during their end phase, and then using the Magnmahut effect during the end phase to add the Rokket Tracer. Gonna draw for a turn, and I mean at this point, yeah, I get to just bring back Lubellion by sacking off the Druiswarm, which will allow me to pop the Nib token, normal summon Tracer, and I'm just gonna go for lethal pretty quickly, because I know my opponent does not have any resources to potentially counter me with, so there we go. I thought I screwed up my zone placement there, but I actually ultimately didn't, but we made the Borrelend anyway without using Pisty and Triple Burst, and managed to play despite our own self-inflicted, mind you, mind games. So good stuff when we managed to do that. We have one more duel to check out. Let's go straight into that here. Okay, our last opponent is on a blind second 8-axis deck. They're playing some pretty interesting tech, including a playset of Blackwing. Oh god, what is it called? Chris? I have no idea. It's the level 2 that summons itself if you have a monster with 2, or if anyone has a 2000 attack or more monster on the field. I'm using that to go into Baronne, I assume, with like their Danger Bigfoots and their Kaijus and such. So this time, I think our opponent did actually let us go first here, but I kind of wanted to see if I could play through this hand, even though I thought it might be Mikanko. Because we didn't open a whole lot of gas here, but despite that, we're still able to go ahead and set up the Tracer here, going for a Chaos Ruler. This is a very atypical line, but if you only have access to like the Rokket Tracer, you can potentially do this by, as you saw there, going into the Striker Dragon, using the Striker to add the Boot Sector, and then use the other Striker effect to wheel the Tracer back to hand, then activate Boot Sector, special the Tracer, and then, as you saw, yeah, go into the Chaos Ruler. So Chaos Ruler is going to find the Magnmahut here, and also by sending the Seyfert, I get to summon the Levianeer. Levianeer, I'm going to hand rip by banishing 3 dark monsters from my opponent's hand. I don't get to actually see what I hand rip, but I do get to shuffle a card back. Alright, now we get to activate that Lubellion we added back to get a Druiswarm. Gonna sack that Levianeer off for the Lubellion. I could have sacked the Chaos Ruler, which might have been better, but actually, I think it probably would have been better, but at the same time, I get to, by doing this, save the Chaos Ruler as a material for the follow-up turn, which is nice. Alright, Magnmahut and Chaos Ruler are going to go into the IP Masquerena, and I'm just going to set 2, leaving the Druiswarm in hand, and then adding a Baldrake. So, as you can see, again, opponent actually, I meant to pause before the opponent conceded, not give that away, but yeah, the only thing we opened was a quick launch, which might not seem like it does a lot by itself, but again, we got to go for the Tracer, do the Striker, wheel it back to hand with the Boot Sector, and then that actually resulted in a lot. The Chaos Ruler found us enough stuff to extend into a lot of plays, including an IP, which potentially threatens to go into the Knightmare Unicorn here, as well as the disruption of the Branded Beast and Regained, and we also have the Baldrake that they know we have, the Druiswarm that they don't know about, as well as the Ash Blossom, and then even Call by and Crossout. So even though this was a quick game, the opponent snap conceded really easily here, I still wanted to show it off because it showed how much you can set up off of very little resources. But yeah, that'll go ahead and do it for this video. Thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate you sticking it out all the way to the end. Let's go ahead and see our outro now. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching it all the way to the very end. That means a whole lot to me, and it's also a fantastic way to support the channel. And if you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways besides YouTube, there are plenty of ways to do that. If you check out the description below, you'll find a bunch of links down there. One of them goes to my Patreon. You're actually seeing the names of everyone subscribed to the Patreon on the screen right now. So if you're interested in getting your name in the credits here at the end, if you want to see more daily Master Duel content, or if you're interested in one-on-one private coaching sessions, I offer all of that on Patreon. I also stream live on Twitch. Feel free to go ahead and click that link and follow and or subscribe there. I also have the Discord community, if you want to follow that link, where hundreds of duelists have already signed up. Free to join, and you can just come hang out, talk about the game, and chill in general. Final link that's going to be in the description is my Twitter. You can follow that if you want some more notifications of what's happening with the channel. So, all in all, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.